Hey guys, it's Diane. A few weeks ago, I told you a few spooky things that was going on in my house, and I promised you I would tell you about my mom's haunted house. So today's the day, and I don't talk about this stuff inside the house, so I'm out on the screened-in porch. So here we go. Now this happened over a 3-month period. I have written it concisely as I can to highlight the important parts, and that'll be good enough. I hate for this to take so long. Okay. In 1974, on April the 3rd, my daughter Ashley was due to be born. She did not come that day. She waited a week, thankfully, because that day was an outbreak of tornadoes in Alabama. Well, my parents, my children, my husband were huddled in my basement, and lo and behold, Mom and Dad's house on the other side of town was destroyed. So I was glad they were in my basement. So they had to rebuild. They lived in a, moderately nice neighborhood, middle class. Their house, actually, I grew up there. I moved there when I was in the 2nd grade. And it was on a block, but they owned half of the block. And the other side of the block was totally empty for some reason. And right between them was a little stream that I used to play in, sell boats in. Anyway, I digress. So they started rebuilding their home. It was beautiful. It was a country French style house with rock work, 3 bedrooms, 2 bath. Had a split level. You went up like 8 steps to get to the 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. It was very nice. They had money left over to build a pool, so they built a pool in the backyard. Mom and myself and some cousins, we just had a grand time building a fence around the pool. It was nice. The first thing that happened in that new house is my son Brandon. He was probably 6 or 7, maybe. I guess he might have been 6. Okay. He was spending the night with my parents, and she had left him up watching TV late at night by himself downstairs, just the 8 steps. But he was in the main room watching TV. And out of the corner of his eye, he saw something. So he turned to look, and there was a white cloud. Had no shape to it. It wasn't an orb, it was a white cloud. Was just slowly moving across the kitchen toward those steps. Well, he couldn't run up the steps because the white thing was moving there. He just started screaming to the top of his lungs, "Mama Nell, Mama Nell." And now their bedroom was up the steps and way down a long hall. And my mom said that she was in a dream state and that she felt like she was dying. She said she actually felt like she was dying. And she heard Brandon screaming her name in that fog, and it woke her up or brought her back. She swears that she was like dying. But anyway, so she jumped up, ran down the steps to see what was the matter with Brandon, and he explained to her what had happened. Well, we've never had anything happen like that before. Nothing. Okay, that was the first thing. Now, Next thing happened, my mom and dad got divorced. Stress of building a house, and tell you the truth, I don't know what they were ever doing together anyway. So they divorced. And I was glad because they were getting, screaming at each other, and I was afraid one of them was going to kill the other one. Not that that would have happened, but I was glad they got a divorce. Okay, so Mom's living alone now in this house. So we were having a pool party, just family. We're cooking out. I think it was girls' day. It was just all women and children. And Mother looked up at the kitchen window on the deck beside the pool, and she said, "Who opened my kitchen window?" And she looked up there. We all looked up there and was going, I didn't. Well, I sure didn't. And she got up, went in the house, closed the window, and locked it. It had never been opened or unlocked. All of her windows were always down and locked. Now, that reminds me of something I told you all about in my video. I'm going to link it below. So if you haven't watched it and you want to watch it, you can. But I walked in my sunroom one morning, was eating my cereal, and noticed one of my windows was open about 4 inches. I mean, that's kind of strange, isn't it? When I was thinking about Mom's story and that window, and then I had the window that was open, kind of got chill bumps, I hope they're not related at all. Anyway. So, that was just one of those things. No one had an answer for that. She'd just been in there that morning, drinking coffee. She lived alone. Well, I lived about 18 minutes away in the county. I was teaching school at that time, and I was in my second marriage. I think I had 3 children at this time. I did. I had 3 children. She called, and she started telling me about weird things that were happening in the house. So I was listening. It was kind of interesting. She was the type of person. She was the life of the party. Had to be doing something. So every night she would go out to eat with a friend, and before she left, she'd turn on a lamp in the living room so it wouldn't be dark when she came in. Okay, every night when she came home, the lamp was off. I don't mean some nights, I mean every night that she came home. One night she came home, the lamp was off, and a radio had been turned on, and it was blaring music. Can you imagine walking into that house to try to turn a light on? Anyway, one night she came home, lamp was off. She walked in, turned the lamp on, and there was an open magazine on the sofa. A magazine that she had never seen before, and a magazine she would never have bought. Well, that was freaky. So she's telling me all of this stuff, and I'm wondering what's going on. So, she slept in the master bedroom. I told you, up the 8 steps, down a long hallway, and that's the master suite down there. She decided to come up to where the steps were, walk up the steps. Straight across is a very little bedroom. To the right is the bathroom. Walk down a little piece, there's another bedroom on the right. She decided to stay in that very, very small bedroom. I mean, it was small. It was like all bed and a dresser, period. That's all that was in there. So she decided she'd feel safer in that bedroom. I don't blame her. You could also hear what's going on in all the house and not be so isolated. So, of course, she'd lock the door. So, she'd call me and tell me every time the light was off. And one night she was just freaked out and she wanted me to come down there. I didn't like going down there anymore. I felt, it felt weird. Just the vibe in the house just felt weird to me. Kind of like, I don't want to be here. But I would go and talk a while and then I'd leave. I mean, this went on and on and on. I was getting so tired of it because lots of nights she'd call me to come down there just to be with her for a while. I mean, and I'm teaching school. I got 3 kids. I got a husband. I got a cook, and then I got to go to work. I was getting really tired of it. But she needed me, so I went. She asked me to ask my father if he was sneaking in the house, because he did have a key, which would be a logical explanation. You know, you'd think about that. But let me tell you about my father. He had early Parkinson's. So I can't see him, going to the trouble of doing that to scare Mother, maybe so she'd take him back or whatever. I never could see him doing that. But I asked him because she asked me to. Well, it hurt his feelings. And I apologized. I said, I'm sorry, Mother wanted me to ask you. I know you didn't do that. I know you wouldn't do that. I mean, he had tears in his eyes. I mean, it really hurt his feelings. And I felt bad for asking. But that was off the board as far as I was concerned. So one night she called me. She said, there's someone coming up the basement steps. And I said, what? She said, yeah, there's someone coming up the basement steps. I can hear them. And she said, they're wiggling the knob. And I said, Mother, why are you calling me? Call the police. And she said, you do it. I don't want them to hear me. So I said, okay, I'm coming down there. So we hung up. I called the police. I had an 18-minute drive. Got down there. The police was there. They were already inside. Well, I didn't want to get shot, so I didn't pull up in the driveway. I pulled, across the street in a neighbor's side, and Mother saw me, and she told the police that was her daughter, so they told me to come on over there. Well, they went through the whole house, the basement, everywhere. There was no sign of anything. The basement door was locked. Now, let me tell you, her basement was spotless. It didn't have a thing in it. Not a thing. Remember, everything she had was destroyed in the tornado. So, everything that she had bought was being used upstairs. So, I mean, there was nothing there. Nothing, no sign. So, I made her go home with me that night. She did. She stayed a couple of days, and she went back home. This happened again and again and again. We called the police 3 different times, and there was no one there. No signs of anyone. Okay? So at this point, I'm thinking, I think she's making this up for attention. Yeah, I think Mother's making this up for attention. Because like I said, she was the center of attention. She had to have attention. And maybe living alone had forced her into these little antics. I don't know. That's what I thought. I honestly did. So one day she called me, and she said, you've got to come and see this. So I said, okay. I went down there. She took me in the bedroom and closed the door. And she said, do you see the door? And I'm looking at the door. The door does not even meet the wall to shut it. And of course, there's no way to lock it. And I went, what? What happened? She said, I don't know, but I can't lock the door. She said, last night I had to push the dresser in front of the door. Oh my God. Now, Mother did not do that. How did that happen? You think, well, the house is settling. Well, it's brand new. I don't think so. Okay, that was a head scratcher. So I thought, okay, it is time for me to investigate this myself and find out what is going on. So, we planned a pool party with men. Okay, and at dusk, everybody started leaving in their cars. Everybody started leaving. Everybody left, even Mother in her car. But there were like 5 men left in the house. So the thing was, they were going to hide in the sunroom behind the carport and just stay out there and be real quiet and listen and see what went on. Well, wouldn't you know it, nothing happened. They called about 12:30 and said, we're leaving. We can't take this anymore. Nothing's going on here. So they left. So that little trick warranted nothing. My little sting I set up didn't work. So the lights, she kept going out and eating with friends. The lights continued to be turned off. And occasionally someone walked up the basement steps. Now I still did not know whether to believe her or not. I didn't. But the dresser thing, the door thing, was one of the things that made me question everything. So I decided to put strings on every door. Every door. If someone opened it, the string would be pulled off of the tape. So we did that one night and left. We stayed gone 2 days. She stayed with me. We went back to check it out. Front door, first thing, string was still there. So we was wondering about the inside. So we went inside. Every string was still in place. Nothing. I mean, come on. What is this about? I'm almost finished. So one night, I said, let's approach this a different way. Let's put strings on every door again. Now you and I will leave at dusk. I had children in the back seat. We were in Mother's car. And I said, we'll leave at dusk like you normally do to go out and eat. Turn the light on in the living room. And we'll just go and then watch. So we drove up the street, doubled around behind a few blocks, and came back another way. And right before we got to the house, we saw that the light had already been turned off. Oh, Mother was so mad. She whipped in that driveway, scared me to death. And she said, I'm going to see who's in there. They're in there right now. They've got to be. So she whipped in there and started walking up to the door. Well, let me tell you about the door. The door was a double French door with windows, half of it, top to half, with curtains. You couldn't see inside. But every time you opened that door, it made a definite sound. Every time she opened the door. And she never bothered to fix it. Maybe some oil would have helped, but she never did. So anyway, she's barreling up to the door. My mom was not a wimp. She wasn't scared of anything or anybody. So she went up to started walking toward the door, and she got about 10 feet from the door, and the door opened and closed, went, but the door didn't open or close, but it made the sound. Mother stopped dead in her tracks. She heard it. I heard it. I said, get back in the car. She turned around and ran and got back in the car. I mean, someone opened that dang door, but it didn't open. Oh, you see how frustrating this was? Well, she went home with me again. We went back the next day. All the strings were intact. The door had not been opened. The string was still there. And she said, you know what? I've had enough. I'm selling the house. She sold it really quickly. It was a beautiful home. It was beautiful. She just couldn't take it anymore. It was like a big conundrum. These strange events, I mean, they have no explanation. Some people say everything has an explanation. There was no explanation for this. I mean, there was no reason for this. It's just unexplained. I mean, was it paranormal? Or was it a person? I don't know. I'm curious as to what you think that was. What happened? Okay. It's never been solved to this day. If you got an explanation, I'd love to hear it. Thank you, and I will see you next time, and happy Halloween on that note.